Welcome everyone to another We the Geeks Google Hangout. I'm Vijay Kumar, Assistant Director for Robotics and Cyber-Physical Systems at the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. I'm joined at the White House today with Tom Khalil, who's the Deputy Director of Technology and Innovation in our office. And this Hangout session is going to be about robotics. We have an amazing group of experts and some really cool robots that are joining us today. To join the conversation and ask your questions on Twitter, use the hashtag #WeTheGeeks, and we'll get to some of them during the discussion. And now I'll turn it over to Tom Khalil for some opening remarks to introduce our panelists. Tom?
Great. Thanks, Vijay, and thanks for joining OSTP and sharing all your expertise on robotics. So my name is Tom Khalil. I'm going to be helping to moderate this We the Geeks. Before we turn things over to our panelists and introduce them, I just wanted to give you a sense for why this was a priority for President Obama. He announced the National Robotics Initiative in a speech he gave at Carnegie Mellon in the summer of 2011. And there were a number of reasons that the administration has made robotics a priority. One is it's really at the tipping point in terms of economic growth. Economists estimate that it could increase economic activity by as much as 100 billion over the next 10 years. That's the first reason. Second, as we're going to hear from our panelists, robotics has the potential to support a broad range of applications, everything from space to manufacturing to surgical robotics to search and rescue, transportation, and many others. And finally, robotics is one of those things that can get young boys and girls excited about science, technology, engineering, and math. And for all those reasons, President Obama launched the National Robotics Initiative, which involves increasing federal investment in research and development. And we've got some fantastic roboticists who are going to tell us about what we can do today with robotics and what might be possible in the future. And I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves, starting with Allison.
Sure. Hi, I'm Allison Okamura. I'm an associate professor in mechanical engineering and computer science at Stanford University, and my interests are medical robotics and haptics, which is the sense of touch for robots.
Great. And Matthew.
Oh, hi. My name's Matt Mason. I'm a professor of robotics and computer science at Carnegie Mellon University, and I work on robotic manipulation, and then I also have the honor to be the director of the Robotics Institute here.
Fantastic. And Daniela.
My name is Daniela Rus, and I'm a roboticist and the director of MIT's Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Laboratory. My overall goal is to develop the science of autonomy. In a nutshell, my group works on developing capabilities that will enable teams of robots to work together without human supervision.
Super. Rodney.
Hi, my name is Rodney Brooks. I'm a reformed professor, no longer a professor. I've built various robot companies, including iRobot, and now I'm at a robot company called Rethink Robotics, where we're developing this robot and selling this robot, Baxter, which is a manufacturing robot. And our goal is to bring more manufacturing back to the U.S. from overseas by the use of robotics and other information technology on the factory floor.
Fantastic. And Robin.
Hi, I'm Robin Murphy. I'm a professor of computer science and engineering at Texas A&M. I'm also the director of the Center for Robot-Assisted Search and Rescue. We've been in 15 of the 35 disasters that robots have been used in worldwide, and that includes small ground robots, aerial robots, and water-based robots.
Great, great. And John Green, what are you doing here?
I don't know. I am not a roboticist, nor do I have any knowledge of robots. I am an interested observer. My name is John Green. I'm a novelist and video blogger, and my brother Hank is something of an amateur roboticist, and I think that he is on an airplane right now, and so I got this gig. But I'm really excited to talk about this because it's something I'm really interested in.
I think you also have like something like 250 million downloads as well, so that may be another reason why you're here.
Yeah, well, thank you.
So Allison, tell us why robotics are so important for things like minimally invasive surgery, and why is that so important for surgery?
In surgery, you can think of the robot as an instrument, a tool that the surgeon can use to improve their accuracy, their access to locations deep in the body, and even the surgeon's visualization of what's happening during the surgical process. So both the mechanics of the robot, the fact that you can make them very small and get them deep inside the body without causing much trauma to the patient, as well as the additional integration of information, say from medical images, really allows robots to make surgical procedures more accurate.
Great. And Matt, I'm wondering if you can tell us some of the things that you've been doing that are related to STEM education.
Sure, there's actually quite a lot going on here, as well as at a lot of our peer organizations. I've actually brought an example along. Is this a good time to show it?
Absolutely.
So this is King Tut. King Tut is a project that was developed for an 8th grade class in history and mathematics. So, you know, we're all very excited about what robotics can do to draw children towards science and technology and math. But one thing we found is that it can draw kids to other things, and then part of the fun is even integrating other subjects with technology. So this is an example from history and math. If I get it going, he'll do his little thing. I have to turn this knob, so he's got sensors and motors, and there's a programming language that the kids learn. Mm-hmm. So, and it follows the story of King Tut. So he was born, and he's very happy now because he's got a lot of gold. Mm-hmm. And then now it's waiting. There's this range sensor here. I don't know if you can see that. There's a range sensor here. When I put my hand there, well, now he got sick, and he's very young, and he's sick, and he died at age 19, and you know, and he was buried until we dug him up. So it ties into the historical story of King Tut. It's something that the children, students, can put together with craft materials. You know, there's a kit that's produced. The board that they use to control it is called a hummingbird board. Mm-hmm. It's a product of the Create Lab, which is one of the labs that does this kind of thing at Carnegie Mellon. Mm-hmm. So, you know, this is the kind of thing. I think what's interesting is that it's not robotics as it was envisioned in science fiction. It's really not even robotics as we roboticists envisioned it. Mm-hmm. It's robotics as it's envisioned by an 8th grade student. Yeah. And so, you know, that's, I think, a great thing that we can do to empower people and help them to be creative, right, and serve the needs of the society.
But along the way, they're learning some computer science and electrical engineering. And
they sure are. They're programming these things, and they're wiring them up, and they are building robots.
Yeah, great. Daniela, tell us about some of the research that you're doing in robotics related to manufacturing.
So my group is developing technologies that allow teams of robots, groups of robots, to execute complex assembly operations that require multiple steps. We are also working on how to custom design and rapidly fabricate new kinds of robots to create just-in-time robots that have the skills that are needed.
Yep, we lost it.
Oh, God. And rapid fabrication. Can you not hear me?
Yeah, no, we can hear you now. You're breaking up a little bit.
Okay, I get a little bit closer. So let me give you an example of a complex assembly task that can be automated today. I saw a lot of moving trucks on my way to work today. It's August and the students are moving in. And we all know that students are great customers of the application. But I can't mention it's not so easy to put together. Wouldn't it be nice to have a robot that could lend a help? Because we know that students are more important things.
Daniela, we're having problems with your audio.
I have problems with my audio.
Yeah, it sounds like machine gun fire. Just,
So what should we do? Is this better? If I get closer to the microphone, is this better?
No, that's good.
That's good? Okay.
Yes.
So let's see. So we would like to help our students assemble their own IKEA furniture with robots while they focus on more important things like building new robots, as Matt told us, or doing homework, or grabbing a drink with their friends. In other words, meet IKEA Bot, and also one of its designers, Ross Nepper, who is a research scientist in my group. Ross was also a graduate student in Matt's group at Carnegie Mellon.
Hey, Matt.
Hi, Ross.
So we are developing a system that enables teams of robots to work together to autonomously assemble a piece of IKEA furniture, but really other complicated assemblies, even planes, can be carried by our system.
no, but the fact that it can assemble IKEA furniture is much more important. Does it really? It will assemble my IKEA furniture?
Absolutely.
How much does it cost, and can I have it tomorrow?
Well, what is the cost of the fun of watching robots? So if we get these robots in your apartment, then the cost will be about 10 minutes. So this IKEA Bot is an end-to-end system that can build a piece of furniture by examining its CAD file and by synthesizing a sequence of actions. Once we have the actions, they are distributed onto robots. So in this example, you see a robot fetching a leg to the location, to the next attachment point, and you see another robot applying a screwing tool that puts the leg in. And all this is done autonomously without any human intervention. Now, a lot of people worry that robots will take jobs away from humans, but I believe that instead of taking jobs away, robots will make jobs easier and more interesting. So, for example, IKEA Bot can collaborate with humans with its human users to get help when it gets in trouble. So, say the leg it's attaching to the table is out of reach. IKEA Bot can synthesize a command for help in English or any other language, and ask the human, in this case, ask Ross to hand over the legs. So you can see how this can have this kind of capability can have broad applications in manufacturing.
Super. Rodney, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the mission of Rethink Robotics and what you've been able to do so far with Baxter.
Yeah, so we've been building Baxter. I'm just going to get Baxter going here, and it's going to do a simple little task. Oops, where'd we go? Okay, so Baxter's going to pick up some cups and put some tea bags in the cups. I was going to. Uh-oh, what happened there? Right, okay. Something's. Okay, I'm going to talk about this. It was running all morning. Okay, now we're going. Okay. So Baxter's actually a robot that's out in factories, running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, doing simple tasks. When it put its fingers in, picked up the robot. This is trained by a regular factory worker. You don't have to be a programmer to do this. It's put the cup out there. Now with its other hand, it's going to go pick up a tea bag and bring that over and put it in the cup. But it's safe to interact with this robot. So even though I just hit my head, it stopped because it felt me. Now it's going to go and look for another cup to pick up. But I'm going to pull the cup out from where it is. It's going to go down. But it's smart enough to say, oh, I didn't get a cup. I better look for another one. So now it's going to go off and look for another cup. It picks up the cup, but it's got error recovery built in. The programmer doesn't have to put that there and stole the cup from it, so it's going to go look for another one. Eventually it's going to pick up the cup. I'm going to let it do it. It's going to go over, put it over there. Whoa, it dropped it. It knew it dropped it. Let's let it find another one. It's using vision of its hand. It's picking up the cup. taking it over, putting it next to the first one. So I'm going to stop that now, so there's not too much noise. The point is that this is a robot that is easy for a factory worker to learn to program. They don't have to go to school. They don't have to take a class. They just learn how to interact with what's on the screen, grab the robot, move it around, show it how to grasp an object. If they put it in the top and open the fingers, the robot figures out, it must be picking up by opening my fingers, whereas if you give it an object and close the fingers, and it feels an object in there, it figures out, that's the way I grasp this sort of object. Then it uses cameras to recognize them. And it's all about the task, not about just following trajectories, which a conventional industrial robot has been. So we've moved from a sequence of motions to a sequence of subtasks, and you saw there that when a subtask failed, it was able to recover. And the important thing about this is really that an ordinary factory worker can use the robot and make it do a task, whereas in the past, industrial robots have taken specialists who understand quaternions and Hamiltonians and other things in order to get them to do tasks.
And so how could that help bring manufacturing jobs back to the U.S.?
Well, what we've done over the last 50 years is outsourced the dull, repetitive labor that people in the U.S. don't want to do. The sorts of, picking stuff up and putting in boxes. It's very hard to get people to do those tasks because they're really boring. What this lets us do is let a factory worker become a supervisor of robots and increase their productivity and do more interesting tasks, do the stuff that's cognitively slightly more difficult, or the fine motor skills that this robot can't do. So it takes over the dull, repetitive tasks and then thereby makes American labor competitive with low cost.
Everything is. Okay. Robin, can you tell us how you've been using robots in the area of search and rescue?
Yes, our group works on, of course, disaster robots, but the big focus of the research that we learned from all of these field exercises and being at 15 disasters has been over 50% of the failures or the problems with it have been because of human-robot interaction. They're just too hard to use. And so our work is focused on that aspect, and then also thinking about what do you do if you have a rescue robot and you find a person? You're going to be trapped with and be extricated. It takes 4 to 10 hours while they try to extricate you. So we're thinking about not only how does an operator use a robot, but how the person at the other end. So I'd like to introduce to you here Survivor Buddy. So this is a basic search robot.
My name is Survivor Buddy. Let me connect you to the responders.
So this is a head that's mounted on a standard rescue robot. And yay, Rod, this is an iRobot SUGV. But the idea of this robot is that now that for that 4 to 10 hours, the medical response team, the responders can interact with you. They can assess your condition. We recently ran an exercise in February doing that. They can even hold up little signs if your eardrums have been blown out from an explosion. But then you can go watch movies. You can have two-way video conferencing with your family and friends. The counselors can come in and talk with you. We can play music. We know that certain types of musics make your heart beat slower and sync in with that. This gives a really close tool that can be used for people who are trapped. But the same research, even though we're thinking about people trapped in buildings, 20, 60 feet below the surface, in an earthquake, but the same technology can be used for a person in elder care who can reduce mobility in a bed and is just kind of hanging out and interacting with it that way.
Great. So, John, if you have any questions for our world.
I do. There's a lot of echo all of a sudden. Yeah. Okay, it's gone. I asked followers on Twitter and Tumblr if they had questions for you guys, and a lot of them did. I thought one of the most interesting questions came from Tumblr and a user named I'm Cat Jesus. I don't know if this person is a cat or if they are worshipped by cats, but the question was, you know, a lot of the people who were asking questions were students, and they were interested in sort of educational applications of robots. And one of the questions I saw the most was like the one from I'm Cat Jesus. It was, will there ever be teacher robots, or robots that can be like real humans? Okay, thanks. So,
I can take
will you be replaced? Will all of you be replaced in the classroom by robots?
I'll just start things off. First off, I'm here to represent education, just because they were assigning roles to us. But everybody on this panel is involved in education in many ways. I'll just say that you know, I think the way most of us look at robots, it's not like this is a robot and that's not a robot. We usually focus really on the problem. And in the case of education, that means we're trying to figure out how to use technology to assist in education. So that is happening. There's lots of technology helping in education different ways. One example was King Tut that we were just looking at. There's a project at CMU called Project Listen that uses computers that can listen to children read. They can tell when children have made a mistake and help them, help them learn to read. It gives them more personal attention than they can usually get in a classroom. So it is happening. I personally, I'm not worried about myself being replaced by a robot, because nobody can figure out what I'm doing anyway. So that's, I want to keep it that way.
I think if I can pop in, an interesting related question is that in robotics we often work with hardware, and in the current trend toward online instruction, most of that is missing a hardware interaction component. So one thing a lot of roboticists, including myself, are interested in is how do you get robotic devices in the hands of students so they can be doing laboratories, so they have a hands-on experience that might go along with potentially online learning or some other sort of student-teacher interaction.
So let me jump in and also say that we are very interested in this question, and in fact we are interested in a world where every child can have a robot, so one robot per child. And our technologies for developing very rapidly and inexpensively robots leads to devices like the one I have in my hand. This is a robot that costs $10 in parts, and it works like a miniaturized Segway. This kind of robot can really help children understand about geometry, understand programming, understand physics. So I think robots can be extremely effective tools for the future, and the education robots are getting cheaper and cheaper by the day.
Great.
That's cool.
Ron, another question?
I wanted to bookend that by saying that I am also asked a lot about this because of the online education initiative my brother and I run called Crash Course, and I do not think that it's a good replacement for real life interaction, and I don't think that like I can ever be your teacher. My hope is that I can sort of facilitate educational experiences rather than try to recreate them, because I do think that there's something about having a real thing in your hands, working with stuff, and also having the opportunity to talk to people in real life. There's not quite ever going to be any way to recreate that. One more question. This one is from Fam Pants on Twitter. How can we bridge the gap of tech in the classroom, teacher education, and especially students being ahead of the technology curve compared to their teachers? That's certainly not true of all teachers, of course, but sometimes teenagers know more about Tumblr than we do. And
Matt, you want to take a crack at that?
I've certainly suffered from that. I had a course one time that was ahead of the students, and then 1 year something happened. Lego had released Mindstorms, and in the space of 1 year, all of a sudden the students were all ahead of me. And it's a shock when it happens. Let's see. The question is, how can we deal with that? We have some programs to try and train teachers in this technology. I guess that's the answer that leaps to mind, but it's a big job. I don't know.
So one of the initiatives that President Obama announced recently at the 3rd annual White House Science Fair, where there's a lot of kids who are involved in robotics competitions like FIRST, is an effort called US 2020, and this is an effort to get companies to encourage 20% of their employees to volunteer at least 20 hours a year in the classroom. So one way to address this is to increase the number of professionals in science, technology, engineering, and math who are working with teachers and can help support some of this project-based learning. So Vijay, I know we've got a bunch of questions that have come in on Twitter. What are some questions that you'd like to ask?
Well, there are two types of questions which have to do with the limitations on robotic technology. So on one side, people ask, is it realistic that there will be a robot that will have the AI capabilities to pass a Turing test? On the other side, we have people who are asking about the odds of reaching a singularity being the point, the tipping point at which humans are inferior to robotics in terms of intelligence capabilities, computing, sensing, and perhaps performing tasks. And I wonder if you would have an answer to these two sets of questions.
And can I just jump in for the 9-year-olds and people like me who may not know what a Turing test is? Will someone define it?
Well, there are 4 computer scientists, actually 5 in the mix. I'm sure one of them will.
I nominate Rod.
Okay.
Yeah,
Then I'll say the Turing test has become a famous touchstone for when robots will be intelligent, when computers will be intelligent. It was actually a rhetorical device that British computer scientist Alan Turing talked about in 1950. He was really the person who invented modern computation. And as a thought experiment, he said, what if he was trying to say, can a robot or a computer ever be intelligent? And he said, what if you can't tell the difference between whether you're talking to a person or whether you're talking to a robot? Surely that robot is intelligent in that case. This has become sort of a parlor trick of, can my program confuse people and make them think that the program is a person or the robot is a person. I think that all the robots we build, by their appearance or by what they offer, are making a promise on how much they can deliver. The robot doesn't pass the sniff test or the Turing test if it doesn't deliver on that promise. So many robots pass the right sort of test. They act like creatures because they're not promising to be as smart as Einstein, say. If your robot looks like Einstein, it better be as smart as Einstein, or it's going to fall short of your expectations. So I think thinking about the Turing test per se is not quite the right way to think about it. Rather, let's think about what is the robot you're building promising the user, and does it deliver on that promise? And that's what I think we see with lots of practical robots out there in the world. Robin's robots that go into restaurants, by their appearance, a certain amount of intelligence, and that's what they deliver.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So here's another question for the ladies in the panel. As young girls, what sustained your interest in robotics and in STEM?
And who asked that question?
It comes from Project Scientist.
So I can say there's two things for me. I grew up watching Lost in Space, and I was really in love with a robot. Danger, danger. The other thing I was very excited about was a series of books about the Barbapapa family. So this family is a family of blobs, and the blobs can change shape and take on whatever is needed for the task. So for instance, when the family is invaded by a giant bean, the Barbapapa family turns into scissors and knives and chops down the bean. I just thought that was the greatest thing. And I have to say that I'm so excited to have the opportunity to work on robots that attempt to capture some of this flavor of capability.
Great. Allison?
Yeah, I'd say the turning point for me that got me really addicted to robotics was realizing how much they can improve human quality of life, whether it's a rehabilitation robot that helps a patient or in our case, a needle steering robot that can do minimally invasive surgery. And in fact, I didn't get a chance to show my demo earlier, so if you don't mind, I'd like to introduce another woman roboticist who's my graduate student, Ann Majovich, And we're just going to do a really quick demonstration of one way in which medical robotics can really help people, which was for me a very inspiring thing in terms of joining this field. So what Anne is setting up right now, I don't know if you can see this, this is a very thin needle, and we use a robot to steer a needle so that you could get to a target, say inside an organ, and treat a patient in a way that's very minimally invasive. So what she's doing now also is a very interactive sort of human-robot behavior where she's teleoperating the robot. She's moving around a handle of a master manipulator and interacting with a virtual environment as well as a real robot. And I can even flip over quickly to a view of the robot where you might be able to see the needle in the artificial tissue a little bit better.
Whoa.
And so one of the things that's really gratifying for me in working in this field is being able to work with and mentor terrific students like Anne and give lots of tours to young girls and show these kinds of demonstrations so that people can understand that it's not just about building gadgets, it's about designing devices that are going to help people.
Right. Robin?
Well, for me, I didn't fall in love with robotics until I was in graduate school. I thought robots were bulky, stupid things, so the idea of making them intelligent was just like, that's crazy talk. But as a kid, even when I was like 8 or 9, I wanted to be an engineer. I was growing up during the space program. The idea of technology that was of use to people. I didn't want to be a basic scientist. I wanted to be an engineer because of that. And I got my degree in mechanical engineering, and then later was doing so much with computers that I went back for computer science, and I fell in love with it. And when, in 1995, when there started to be like the Kobe earthquake, the Oklahoma City bombing, and the possibility of taking these small robots that were being developed for NASA and taking the beautiful science that was being done for planetary rovers and apply them to something meaningful, that really resonated for me.
Mm-hmm. Here's one other question from Alex Howard. Should Asimov's laws of robotics be integrated into rules and regulations as more robots enter the home and workplace?
I want to jump in on that one. One of my colleagues, Dr. David Woods at Ohio State, who's a resilience engineer, we wrote a paper called The 3 Laws of Responsible Robotics, and then we saw this problem happen time and time again. Everybody seems to be somehow counting on these 3 laws of robots that start off assuming the robot can recognize a person. I want to show you this robot here. This is one of our quad rotors. It's a, it's a quad, 4 rotors. It's one of our search and rescue aerial vehicles, and it spins around and around. Well, we used this in a production of A Midsummer's Night Dream, where all the fairies in the play had their own aerial robot floating around them to make the Shakespeare play more surrealistic. Well, this is the first time we've really worked with a large group of people who weren't like really scientists. So all of the theater people, we didn't think we'd have to tell them, look, these robots have spinny blades, keep them away, stay away, do that. They were coming way too close. Yeah. And it turns out everybody believes in customer protection. Our customer safety laws have been so good. And there's this sort of, I'm very concerned about robot manufacturers, is that we sometimes don't take into account that people trust the robots. They think they're smarter than they are, and they think they're more reliable or more cognizant than they actually are. So that's what we've learned.
So, Rob, you've thought a lot about human-robot interaction and building in safety. So what are you?
Yeah. Absolutely. We're getting some echo here. I'm not sure who. The echo's gone. Good. Making robots safe is important. When I was at iRobot, besides the SUGV, the robot that Robin has there, that company's delivered over 10 million robots into people's homes. There haven't been any cases of them injuring people because safety was very important. Not necessarily Asimov's laws. Isaac Asimov was a science fiction writer with 3 laws of robotics, and he actually wrote the laws so the logical inconsistencies and are the basis of all his plots and his stories. But you have to make the robot safe, and as Robin says, people will overestimate how safe things are. So that gets back to my point before about whatever the robot promises, in terms of how it operates or its safety, it better deliver on that. So this robot that's right next to me, as it moves, it's got a model of what's supposed to be happening and what forces it feels, and if it feels something that it's not expecting, it immediately stops. Safety has to be there in all our robots. I think we all work at it very hard, and by making it the #1 priority, it's not Asimov's laws so much as thinking the robot is not allowed to hurt a person, and that's what's important.
Great.
Can I jump in to add to this? Another way to think about safety is to consider what materials we have available to create better and safer robots. And a lot of people, my group included, have started thinking about creating soft materials that can deliver machines that are much gentler for human-robot interaction. And this is an example of such a machine. It's a fish we have created. You can see the body of the fish is totally soft. And what's interesting about this fish is that you can bump into it. It's not going to hurt you. And moreover, this fish can move with the same kind of physical properties as real fish. So you can also use it as a tool to study the secret life of fish or other animals in the ocean.
Great. So, John, any more questions from Tumblr or the Nerd Fighters?
Yeah, I have is there any way that we can get that fish to build my IKEA furniture? Because that to me is like the ultimate end of robotics. Is I buy furniture and then like a $30 fish comes to my house and builds it for me. I do have one other question from CK Hayek. I hope I said your username right, Twitter user CK Hayek, which is how we can address the digital divide that exists in the United States in communities and schools. This has been touched on a little bit with robots that maybe have $10 in parts, and I saw lots of other questions from people who said, I'm really interested in robotics, but the Lego the Lego Mindstorms are $300, and it's difficult to find anything that's cheaper. And I do worry that that's a barrier to entry for a lot of young people in the United States. So I wondered if any of you would like to address that.
So we are very interested in this question. We are very interested in making robots that are inexpensive, and the fabrication of the robot is part of the educational aspect of making it. So here is another robot we have built that is similar to the $10 robot. This robot is done by folding. So this robot is printed using vinyl cutters and regular inkjet printers, and it comes to you flat. Then the user can fold it and use it in a classroom to learn programming, to learn a lot about geometry, patterns, algorithms, and things like that. And so these devices cost on the order of tens of dollars, and you can imagine how in the near future they might become available at the store near you. Perhaps in the near future we will have robo-kinkos where you can walk and say, hey, I want a robot that will play with my cat for 8 hours while I'm at work, and I don't want to spend more than $20 for it. And robo-kinkos will print that for you.
Yeah, can I just say, I think Tom's earlier point about the 2020 project of companies having their people go out and help teams of students in neighborhoods which may not have technologists coming to them very often, and help them enter some of these competitions like First Robots, etc. And maybe the companies providing a little bit of funding, I think can be a real leveler and provide opportunity for lots of places. It does require us all to work at it to make that happen.
I think I might add one.
Big plug. I'd like to put in a big plug, since Rod brought up First Robotics, that this year it's going to be on Nature's Fury. So it's going to be about disasters, and I think that's a great way to show the segue between robots and societal benefits, that people, particularly kids who live in hurricane areas, people who got, like Sandy superstorms, earthquakes, all of them can relate to something bad happening either here or in another country that they see on the media.
I might add one thing, if I could, about the digital divide. I think probably the #1 leveling mechanism we have is the public school system. And so I think what really makes sense is for all of us to do what we can to kind of work with the public school system and put the technology in there and train them. And robotics is just such a great tool for attracting students. I think it can make a big difference there.
Great. I think we have time for one last question that I'd like to ask all the participants, and that is if you could leave the audience with one hope or dream that you have for robotics over the next 5, 10, 20 years, what would it be, starting with Allison?
Yeah, sure. I would say my dream for robotics in the area of surgical robotics is that a patient can show up to a hospital and just leave on the order of hours later having a complex repair of some disease or injury deep in the body and being able to recover very quickly because of the access and accuracy that a robotic tool could give to a surgeon. And I think this sort of thing is really feasible in the next 20 years.
Great. Matt?
Yeah, I think the #1 thing that robotics can do to help the society is help us kind of realize our full potential through education. The ability of a robot to sort of assist teachers and give personal attention to individuals is very, very powerful and I think a noble purpose.
Daniela?
So my dream for robots is to get us to move from PCs onto PRs. In other words, from a personal computer society to a personal robot society. And I would really love to see lots of robots that can help us save time, from doing our laundry folding to unloading our dishwashers to delivering to driving us whenever we need, wherever we need, so we can take the time we spend in the car and do other things.
Right. So everyone should have a butler and a chauffeur. Rod?
Yeah, these things, these smartphones have empowered us all in that we now have the world's information at our fingertips. We have navigation. We can do a lot more than we could do before. I think what I see happening in the next 20, 30 years is people like Matt and me who are older. There's going to be a lot more older people and a lot less younger people to help them out. And so robotics, I think, is going to be crucial to give people dignity to stay independent longer as they get older. And the technology from DARPA for self-driving cars is starting to get into our regular cars now, which enables cars to be much safer so that older people can drive them more safely than they might have been able to in the past. That's a great example of robotic technology enabling elderly people to keep control of their lives longer. I think that's going to be very important for us as a society.
Right. And Robin?
You know, what I want is, a disaster happens, anything, when you go to the media to look at, you see people with hard hats, you see people with canines, you see people with tools, and you see robots. And it's a world where if you don't see a small aerial robot, a little snake robot going down, water vehicles checking out what's going on, you're going, well, what's up with that? Why don't they, where are the robots? They become so part of expediting disaster response and recovery.
BJ, what's your answer to that question?
My answer to the question is similar to Robin's. I think the real role that robots can play is to really make sure that in first response applications, humans don't ever come in harm's way. Too often we rush in trying to figure out how to solve the problem, and when you gotta send robots, robots can act quicker, faster, and get the information back to you so much more efficient.
John, any last thoughts or comments from you or your fans?
I'm a novelist, and a lot of people think that writing fiction is the opposite of science and technology, but my hope for the future is that we stop seeing this bright line between the arts and STEM, and we embrace the fact that there is a long and storied history of novelists writing about science and technology, whether it's Asimov or Richard Powers, that also there's a rich life to be had in the intersection between these spaces, and that they aren't mutually exclusive. So I hope that those of you out there who are interested in the arts and in literature will also embrace science and technology and math, because they aren't opposites.
Great. Well, that is a fantastic note on which to close. And I want to thank all of the participants for a fantastic Google Hangout. If you have ideas for future topics, please tweet us at We the Geeks. And until next time, see you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.